So we'll just start with like the basics of your name, your degree, your year of study, your age, your slogan, your colour.
I'm Liam Carrigan. It's my second year at university. I'm studying media communications. My colour is gold and my slogan is Carrigan for Change.
Excellent. Who's your campaign manager or managers?
My campaign managers are Jack Whitney and Lisa Jar, but I'm also being helped out by Tara Wanikakiaka and Reese Pogonowski.
Cool. Excellent.
And now on to personal politics.
Sure.
Are you aligned with a political party?
No, I think university is a really important time to figure out what you believe in, and that's a process I've been engaging with ever since I got involved in student politics, for example. I helped out Hannah Smith last time at the SRC elections, who's part of Labour Left. I identify with a lot of the values in that party, but not Labour as a whole, I suppose. So I suppose I'd describe my political situation as between the Greens and Labour Left. And I suppose I'll spend the next 2 years trying to figure out which of them I'm more aligned with. But I mean, Australian politics, it's quite a disappointing process, I find.
Cool, thank you. Which of the other candidates in the field of this election do you feel you share your political philosophies with? As vague as may be.
Yeah, sorry about that. No, actually, I find my political philosophies most closely aligned with Ed. I find he has really strong class politics, really strong identity politics. He's very principled. I really agree with a lot of the work grassroots do. I think they did an amazing job at Jam for Oni last year. I think they always run good candidates. I really respect the work Bibi, for example, has done on board. I think Kate would be a strong voice for women within the organisation. She's identified, that's part of her reason for running with me. So basically I identify myself with the two most progressive candidates in this current field.
Cool, thank you. So leading on to that, could you tell us who you'd preference first and second in this election if you were just an ordinary voter other than yourself? And then also who you could preference last?
I'd preference Ed first, and then I'd preference Kate, and then I would preference Callum Forbes last. Yeah.
Cool. And then if you were to get up in this election and come the exec elections for the board, who would you vote for president?
I think more importantly, because I have never worked with these people in a board setting before, I'd like to actually consult the current members of the board, but I see myself as voting for a progressive executive, and that would include Tara, Robby, Bibi and Eve. Out of those two candidates, out of the candidates running, we've got Tim, Tara and Robby have all expressed interest in the presidency. I don't really know Tim, so unless he approaches me, I'm gonna not really have a decision to make there. But I really do know Tara well, and I think she'd be a strong presidential candidate. So if she decides to pursue it, which I don't think she's decided yet, I suppose I'd support her. Robby's definitely very passionate about the organisation, and I really respect the work he's done with the queer portfolio, so I think he's definitely a viable and worthy candidate. But at the end of the day, I'd rather see the board directors determine amongst themselves, like the current 6, who they believe are the strongest candidates. Because I actually think there's a problem at the moment where freshly elected board directors, obviously we've got a cultural problem where the current board try to determine the process of the USU elections. And I don't really feel the candidates actually have knowledge of how these people operate as board directors. So I think it's really hard to actually know what the best decision is if you've not worked with people in those settings.
Right, so you're saying that you think that the votes of the new batch of people coming in are maybe not as informed as the...
Yeah, and I think it's a problem that happens every year.
Okay, if you're elected to board, would you do something to change that
I would like to see us look at how that process works. I think in recent history there've actually been discussions surrounding that. I remember when Sabella Matthews was running against, I think, James Flynn for president, there was a lot of talk about changing it so the outgoing board directors would also have a vote in that election. They obviously decided not to go with that, but I think people that have spent a year working with those directors should perhaps have some influence, or maybe we can look at a system where students directly elect the executive as we do with the SRC president. I think they're interesting questions to pursue at least, but ones I can't really comment on unless I'm elected.
Thank you.
What are your thoughts on Senate appointed reps influencing executive elections?
I think it's wrong. I think Senate influence over a student organisation at the end of the day is very, very wrong. I'd like to be part of a movement towards lessening and eventually removing Senate control in our organisation, because I really believe the only way for this organisation to move forward is for it to be fully student controlled and fully student run. And I don't believe, even though I respect the Senate directors, they're obviously very experienced women, I don't really believe they know what modern students want out of their organisation. So I don't believe it's appropriate for them to vote in executive elections, because then it becomes which board director cozies up to them the most.
Cool. If you were to get up, sorry, just on
Yes.
that, given your so against the Senate appointed
Uh-huh.
board directors influencing the process, if you found out that either Robby or Tara were seeking support of the Senate appointed board directors, would that influence your decision to vote for them?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, I think it would.
Would you go so far as to not vote for?
I want to see the most progressive presidential candidate, so I actually have to really discuss that with Robby and Tara. But if they truly believe in a student-controlled union, I think they will hopefully not petition those board directors, and I will hold that against them, yes, if they do that.
Cool.
Because those are where my values align in terms of this organisation.
Cool. So we're just going to ask some of your views on USU. In your view, what is the most important USU program and why is it important?
I think the USU program that is the most successful and important is Clubs and Societies, because it's the one that's most truly student run, it's the most autonomously run by students, and it presents a strong image of what student run life should look like. It also creates a really vibrant campus community, and that's what the USU is for me. It creates a community on campus. I also think the spaces the USU provides, meeting spaces for students, are also exceptionally important, because that's where all the memories at university happen.
Cool. How would you have voted on the Tom Raue dismissal and why?
I've always made it extremely obvious that I supported Tom. I didn't think that it was right for the board of directors to attempt to kick him off. I attended his court case, and I remember hearing the USU lawyer say the USU is not a democratic institution, and it's something that really strongly informs how I see the USU, because I do believe it should be run as a student democracy. So I don't really have respect for board directors that voted against Tom. I think that he did an incredible amount of work as a board director and actually stuck true to his election promises, which is something we rarely see. So I think it was very wrong to dismiss Tom, to attempt to dismiss Tom, and I'm happy that the motion didn't go through.
Awesome. Another hypothetical. How would you have voted on the life choices and why?
I would not have voted for LifeChoices to be registered with the Clubs and Societies program, although I believe in an inclusive union. I'm a strong feminist, and I don't really see allowing that sort of society to exist on campus and push a pro-life viewpoint is something that really aligns with my values. Although I respect the right of everyone to have their own opinion, even if I disagree with it.
Right, so was it specifically the fact that you yourself didn't believe in the anti-abortion views of the...
I don't believe, for example, I'm pro-choice, and I don't really think it's positive for the union to allow... It's like if the union was allowing things like an anti-gay club. Like I don't really see those sort of clubs as serving any great purpose within our student union. So I don't agree that I would have voted against it.
Right, so you think it's an issue specific?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think generally, it speaks of what do we want to allow in our union, where do we draw the line in terms of the Clubs and Societies program.
If you had to cut $1 million from the budget of the USU, where would you cut it from?
I would like to see any cuts in the USU come from programs that I don't really see benefit the majority of students. For example, Incubate is a viable program, a worthy program, but it doesn't engage a great deal of students. They only choose a select few to go through with that. The USU annual dinner gets a lot of funding. Maybe we could consider paring back on that. And another area, for example, is debates. Like, do we have to spend so much money on what is definitely an extremely successful program and one the union should be proud of, but does it deserve as much funding as it's getting? These are all difficult decisions, but at the end of the day, the union has a lot of reserve funding. It's got $7 million. When the university attempted to take over the union in a hostile manner, that board of directors delivered a budget that would be able to see the union completely self-sufficient, even if it was operating at a loss, without cutting any of its services. So the question isn't like, where do we cut 1 million? It's, are we prepared to operate at a loss and feed into our savings if we want to keep all our services?
It's not really self-sufficient though, because if you're obviously running to your savings,
no, so you want to ensure that the union's commercial operations grow and continue to operate at a place where you can at least look to break even, or negotiate more strongly for extra SSAF funding.
Which of those two options do you see as more
negotiating
likely?
more strongly for SSAF funding? We need strong board directors elected who are going to fight every step of the way to see the organisation get more money, because it deserves a great deal more than it's getting. I think the SRC and the union and the other student bodies really have to sit down and talk it out about where we want to see our student money grow, because I think the union has the biggest impact on campus, and for it to grow, it needs to start really fighting for more money.
In regards to SSAF negotiation though, what do you think previous board directors have done poorly in SSAF negotiation, and what do you think you'd do differently?
I think Hannah Morris, at least when I asked her this question, with all the other board directors were there, she said that the union often has to take a leadership role in these negotiations as the biggest student organisation that is actually still student run, and therefore has to concede a lot more. I would like to see the union, yes, still take a leadership position, but in using that leadership position, push for more funding itself, rather than allowing the union to accept a lesser amount for the benefit of other student organisations. I mean, SUSF does not deserve $4 million. We need to try work out a system where we can at least see the union get a bit more, considering how much great stuff it does do.
Right. But how would you push for that greater funding?
I think in the negotiation room I'd be a very strong voice. I'd sit down with all the other student organisations. I'd work collaboratively with the other board directors I'm elected with, and the current crop of board directors, and I'd try to pragmatically negotiate a way to see the union grow while still seeing the other student unions and student organisations treated fairly in that process.
Right, but at the end of the day, there is going to be a limited pot of money that is allocated. You've named SUSF as one organisation you currently see as overfunded. Do you realistically see the university backing down on giving, or not the university, the negotiation backing down on giving money to SUSF, or do you see other organisations, perhaps like the SRC, losing out in those negotiations?
I wouldn't want to see the SRC miss out in those negotiations, because I believe the welfare services it provides and the fact that it is actually a truly student-controlled organisation is something we should admire. I have an immense amount of respect for the organisation, the things like Cumberland Student Guild do, but maybe we need to start looking at a situation where the union works more closely with them in terms of seeing some of the pools of funding being drawn from there. I also believe I can understand how it's easy to say I'd be a strong negotiator in this situation, but at the end of the day, no, I don't want to see the smaller student organisations miss out, so this organisation does better. I would like to see perhaps SUSF capitulating a bit more and being fair. That would be my ideal, and that's what I'd try to achieve. But perhaps the union has to start looking at where it can get more funding. Do we want to move towards becoming incorporated so we can expand our commercial operations, for example, off campus? We certainly run our own businesses very successfully. Do we want to try startups elsewhere? Or do we want to try and engage the immense amount of alumni we have that have benefited from the student experience our organisation provides, and try to draw more funds from them if we truly want to see our organisation grow? I think there's a lot of different angles to approach more funding for the union, and I would like to explore all of them if elected.
So just to go back to the SSAF negotiation again, Just to clarify, if in the instance that SUSF doesn't want to budge on the amount of money they ask for, are you saying that your second preferred option is to replicate some of the services that, say, Cumberland Student Guild provides, or Supra, or SRC, or all three, and take some of their funding? Is that a second option for you?
No, I don't think I expressed myself well there. I believe that the autonomy of those organisations is important, but I would like to see them working more effectively with the SRC to see if they are, with the USU to see if they are operating as effectively as they can be, and whether or not they would be happy to see some of their funds lessened so our organisation can grow. But that's a question I have to take to them if I'm elected.
That would be reducing their funding.
Yes.
Yes.
Right, so in that one you said that you would like to see them going to the USU. Not sure if I'm understanding this correctly. You said you'd like to see them go to the USU to see if they can cut some of their costs. Do you mean in that you think the USU is being a more effective financial operator than these organisations, or do you think that they are duplicating services?
Yeah, I think, for example, the Cumberland Student Guild, I can understand why it exists, because it's the Cumberland Student Guild operates on a satellite campus, for example, but maybe the USU can look at helping that organisation expand, or possibly incorporating it, because we run the main campus so effectively. But at the end of the day, I think it is important that those students actually have a say on how their campus life is run. And as someone that doesn't actually study there, I'm not sure I'm very qualified to speak on it. I think that the whole concept of SAF negotiations is complicated, and while I do want to see the union move in a stronger direction, I don't really know what the best answer is. And if it means screwing over other student organisations, I think I'd like to take other options at the end of the day. And I'm sorry if that contradicts what I previously said, but I'm really sorry about that. But my own values mean that I don't want to see the SLC get screwed over, or Supra get screwed over, or Cumberland Student get screwed over, so our organisation can become bigger. I'd like to see us look at other options that I discussed earlier.
Cool, no, that's fine. Moving on, what role do you think the CEO of the USU currently plays, and what role would you like him to play?
Well, I mean, from all accounts, the CEO is an incredible financial manager, but I don't really think he respects, at the end of the day, the fact that all decisions in this union are meant to come from students. I mean, he was a big force behind the attempt to kick off Tom Raue. He really, for someone that has so much sway over this organisation, isn't really seen by students as like a figure around. Like the role of the CEO is meant to be to purely manage like the staff and making sure the union at least runs effectively and efficiently. It shouldn't be, he should always, as the Constitution says, be answerable to the board and always be in consultation with the board. He shouldn't just attempt to run the union with, for example, a compliant president. We need a strong president who's going to stand up to the CEO if he's attempting to exert too much control over the direction of the board. I know that he's, for example, from all accounts, quite like in favour of just always following the strategic plan, but I believe like the board of directors should always be driving the organisation. Yes, following the strategic plan, but it's meant to adapt to students on a day-to-day and a year-to-year basis. So I think the only way to be a driving force is to have a CEO, for example, that realises this is a student-run organisation and respects everything the board says to him, even if he or she doesn't agree with it.
So, given the responsibilities the CEO has, do you think their role justifies a roughly couple $100,000 pay level?
No, I think I think running an organisation as large as the USU is certainly no easy task. But I would like to see the amount the USU is spending on salaries perhaps be lessened to go to enhance the student experience we offer.
Would that be from the highest level employees or overall reduction in salary spending?
I would have to look at the budget and where all the money is being distributed, but I would like to see like the great amounts, for example, the CEOs being paid perhaps be lessened, and because I mean the median level staff are people that are being paid a decent wage for the amount of hard work they're doing. So I think, yes, it would come from the top of the organisation, because I don't really particularly believe in a corporate union. I believe in a union that is democratically run, like fairly pays staff for the amount of work they do, and sees our staff on the same level, I suppose.
Just from the other end of the USU hierarchy, at O Week this year we saw the use of the V team, which was on one description, an unpaid group of workers.
Yeah.
How would you be in support of that again next year if you would get up?
There were volunteers, but no, I don't really think unpaid internships, glorified unpaid internships within the USU are a very positive thing. I understand there's an issue of funding, but no, I think people should be reimbursed for the hard work they do for the union, and I want to prioritise students for union jobs and see us move towards hiring students in high responsibility positions. So I would like to see the union move towards having more student workers within the organisation rather than relying on volunteers. Like as I said in my policy statement, I'd like to see the volunteering team move towards more of a community outreach program anyway.
What is your opinion on the current board in terms of how successful they've been, and how would you describe Hannah Morris's presidency?
I think the current board has been, overall, there's definitely some amazing voices on that board. I respect Eve, I respect Beebe, I respect Tara, I respect Robby for his hard work. I respect Tom for the amazing work he did in terms of sustainability. But I don't really know the other board directors, so I won't comment on their performance. But I think to see such a divided board, a board that engaged in such acrimony over the issue of, for example, Tom, was something I was disappointed to see. I believe in a board that works together to further the interests of students. And I don't believe they're able to do that if they're focused on fighting each other. At the end of the day, Hannah Morris's presidency also has to be seen as a disappointment, because she obviously wasn't listening to students. I mean, there was a huge upswell of support for Tom. She still continued to push forward with it. She spent an obscene amount of students' money pushing forward with that case through the court system rather than backing down. I think she was obviously enthusiastic, but at the end of the day, she listened far too much to the CEO rather than other students, and that's not something I want to see from my elected officials. I want to see them remain accountable to the students that fought to get them elected and the students that agreed to believe in their vision for the union, and I don't believe that happened.
Cool. This is when you talked about the current exec at the start of the interview.
Yes.
You also said that you can't comment on some of them because you don't personally know them. Do you feel that, what do you think is the role of personal friendships and in assessing each other's workplace capacity then?
I think it's hard to make a judgment if the only things I ever hear about them are through things like gossip and intrigue. From what I think personal relationships inevitably are going to play a relationship on board, because they do in all workplace settings. The 11 people you're elected to serve, your opinion of them is going to mediate how you view their voice on board, how successful you want to see them be in the organisation. So yes, but I don't think personal relationships should be your focus on board. I don't think you should prioritise friendships over students. I think you should always respect the board directors who are the most competent, the most passionate and the most capable, and you shouldn't let personal friendships get in the way of that.
Right, but in that you said that your personal relationships will inevitably, you think you said, determine how far you want them to succeed on board.
No, I think you mean me, myself, my personal relationships.
No, I think sorry, just
yeah.
In that,
yeah.
I think you said something like your personal friendships will inevitably contribute to you wanting to see them.
Like if like a random board director, that would mediate. No, I don't see my personal friendships as affecting how far I want to see people proceed in the organisation. I want to see the most progressive people proceed in the organisation, because I believe they're the driving force of change in the organisation. and that's what mediates my attitudes there. For example, I might be really good friends with you on board if I was elected, but if you didn't share my values, then ultimately I wouldn't really want to work with you as closely, because how are we going to achieve anything? That's my attitude on that issue.
Okay. Do you support the USU policy of not tweeting names of staff during board meetings?
I think if we want a fully transparent student union and we're the people hiring these staff members, I would like to see the staff tweeted about. But yes, I would. I believe I'm not for that policy. I believe in full transparency, and students who pay for this organisation to be run through SSAF and through our access cards should know exactly what's happening. And so yes, the full details of meetings should be able to be tweeted.
Okay, so then the next question is, do you believe the USU is currently a transparent organisation?
No, the only way you're ever going to truly know about it is to get, like, within the inner circle, to know when the meetings are being held, to go and attend those meetings. They're not very well advertised, obviously. They're all the way over in home building. We rarely get a great deal of attendance in them. I admire the work of board directors like Bibi and Tara in the Transparency Review. But no, I don't really feel like the workings of this organisation are very clear to students. I think students see the surface value stuff of the things they're immediately involved in, such as clubs and societies, commercial operations. I think governance in the USU, you only truly become aware of it if you become a board director and become part of that process.
Cool. And how do you think it could become more transparent?
I think the first step is better publication of, like, the union's minutes. This is something that always comes up. Like, they need to be delivered to students in a much better way. I'm running on things like an online grievance box, so people are able to directly message the board directors they've elected. Things like open board forums in more public places. And I think a greater culture of having our board directors out on the ground, like, at every event, rather than just stuck in a boardroom. It's difficult work, but better publicising of the union's activities is probably the first step, rather than just having a glossy website that runs over all the attractive aspects of the union.
We did actually have some questions about your online grievance box,
yes.
so we should just jump to them.
Yeah, we'll cover that quickly. How do you envisage the measure actually working?
Well, for example, we have a board blog. It could be placed on that website. And for example, if you're a queer student with a queer issue, you could message the queer portfolio. If you're a woman with concerns with the issue, you could message the women's portfolio holder, the sustainability portfolio holder, making our email addresses obvious, taking your complaints directly to the president. That's how I see that working. Like, either having it on the main website or the board blog, so students can interact directly with the directors.
Okay, and how do you see this form of direct online grievance box operating differently to the board director's personal email addresses?
Well, I don't really see them. Like, I would like to see the grievance box advertised a lot better, because it's difficult to find the emails of board directors. So
is it less a grievance box and more just making the email addresses more
prominent? And like, it could be more specifically, you could, I think, making your board directors more easily contactable.
When you said that you wanted forums
yes.
For discussing the USU and complaints and stuff,
uh-huh.
How would that differ from current forums that are already offered, like the recent Transparency Forum or the AA Forum?
I'd like to have them, like, in public places when there is a lot of students around, and encourage them to, like, come and have their say about the union.
Right, so what sort of public place are you envisaging?
Like, for example, like the forecourt of Manning, for example, if we want to use a union space, the law lawns, perhaps, like the board, like, it might sound ambitious, but host its meetings there so they can directly interact with students that are around. I mean, at the same time, we do need a quiet space, but I would like to see the board brought to students more, even if we have to take it to more public places.
So is it effectively you want these meetings to happen outside?
Yeah, happen outside, or be in more obvious areas within home, rather than just the upper levels.
Cool. Thank you. We're back to views in the USU. What are your views on affirmative action in USU policy?
I believe totally in the advancement of women in our organisation, and affirmative action is an effective way of achieving that by having 2 or 3 assured spots within an election being reserved for women. It encourages more women to run, and that's definitely a positive measure I want to see continued. I'm also all for seeing it pursued in faculty clubs and societies as well, to encourage even more women to gain union experience, and also maybe in the jobs we're offering.
Cool. And finally, do you want to see the USU expanding affirmative action to other groups of students, like maybe queer students or international students?
Do you mean in terms of our elections, or
either board director elections or CNS executive elections?
I think CNS faculty societies should definitely have international student officers, because the students directly benefit from the career benefits provided by those societies, and as international students make up 30% of our student population, I believe they should be allowed those benefits, and that would engage more international students in those societies, I believe. In terms of queer students, I think it's an interesting issue, but not every society, for example, needs a queer officer to see the advancement of queer students in that organisation. So that's something that would have to be under review more, I think.
What about board?
Yes.
Do you see expansion of AA in board?
I don't really see the current need for the expansion of queer AA on board, because so many people running for election on board or that have achieved positions on board identify as queer. I would like to see more queer women running for board, but that's incredibly specific AA policy.
But what about international students who make up 30% of the student population?
Yes, I would like to see a position on board. I would like to create a portfolio first, so there can be consultation with the international student community, as was done, for example, with the queer review and the women's review we've seen recently, where those groups of people were actually consulted about what they wanted. Whether or not we reserve a place on board for international students is something we have to first do a review into before we commit to. But I think creating a portfolio on board level would encourage more students to at least know that there's things for them to pursue within the organisation if they were elected.
But you're saying at this point in time you don't support AA for international students?
No, but I support a review into it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, cool.
So just our next section. Spoke to a couple of the work with you on the CNS program in the past, and they've commented that you often arrive late to executive meetings without reason or notice.
Yeah.
Are you worried about being able to commit to being a board director?
No, because it's something I'm so immensely passionate about, and if I was late to those meetings, I've always apologised. I suppose working on my organisational skills is something I'm going to have to fully commit to if I become a board director. I mean, I'm not a perfect person, but I don't think occasionally being late is a great crime. I mean, I'm passionate about student issues. I've invested an immense amount of time over my time at university in engaging in those issues, and I've taken on an incredible amount of work and positions within these organisations because I am so passionate about them. So if I was late to anything, it's only because I've overexerted myself, and I'll have to pull back on those things if elected, but it's only because I care so much and I try to do so much that I end up being late to things, and I've always apologised if I was, and I've done a lot of good work in every position I've held.
Cool.
So there were also comments that sometimes you were impolite or dismissive towards other executive members when you did disagree with them in meetings. How do you plan on dealing with conflict on board? Because obviously you'll be working with people that might have very different views to your own.
Yeah, again, it's probably a problem of passion if I was impolite or dismissive, and I have always apologised if I've offended someone. I believe in open communication. If I've offended you and you bring that to me, I'm always apologetic. I do get fired up, but I'm always someone that says sorry. I care about people. I don't want to see anyone get hurt. And the board directors I'm running with, before I ran, I sat down with each of them and attempted to work out any issues we might have to ensure that our experience over the election is a positive one. So I'm currently in a positive place with all the potential board directors, and if elected, I would work positively with all of them. It's human nature to disagree with people, and it's human nature to have different opinions and to hold those opinions passionately. but at the end of the day we're meant to be working for the betterment of this organisation, and to achieve that I've got to put students first and the organisation first and my own opinions of people second, and work towards establishing positive working relationships with all of them.
Beautiful. So now to the next section of the Student Control Committee, which is one of your policies. How would you plan on implementing this committee?
I believe the creation of committees is probably the best way to create more student engagement within our organisation, and a committee that's working very successfully, for example, is the Clubs and Societies Committee. It's got affirmative action to ensure equal representation of men and women. It has a clear schedule of how the committee is run, and I would like to see the Student Control Committee modelled on that particular committee.
So if it's going to be modelled on the CNS committee, would it sit within the union in that case? Or would it sit within the university?
It would sit within the union because it's attempting to advocate for more student control within the union, not not outside of it.
Right. So then if the purpose of the committee is to sort of fight against what you perceive to be the control of the Senate, what actual power do you think this committee would actually have?
It would be a body that would plan for and petition the Senate for the lessening of Senate control within our organisation. So it would represent the will of students and the will, for example, of the board and the organisation itself, and it would take that to the Senate and try to reach some sort of compromise or a plan for the lessening of Senate control. It's meant to be a committee that is going to fight to see the union evolve in a student positive direction, and until that's achieved, the committee will continue to work towards that.
Right, so did you say it would liaise directly with the Senate?
No, it would consult students and then take the will of students to Senate, I suppose. Yeah, and if that's not successful, at least try establish a more positive relationship with the Senate in trying to at least let the organisation be as autonomous as possible.
Okay.
So, do you feel then that, following on from saying that they would bring the interests of students to the Senate for consideration, do you feel that the current undergraduate and postgraduate student reps to Senate are ineffective?
Sorry, can you repeat that? Do I believe that they're ineffective in how they...
in bringing student concerns to Senate?
No, the Student Control Committee, in my mind, is meant to be an organisation that advocates for greater control of the union by students. I don't want to dismiss the work of the undergraduate and postgraduate student fellows because the union operates separately from the university. It's meant to focus on service provisions and the provision of student life. The Senate is meant to control the administration and running and education of students at the university. The two bodies are distinct. So I do think they do a good job in that regard of fighting for student concerns there.
Right, so you're talking the Senate Control Committee is not expected to represent students in general?
No, to the Senate. No, it's meant to just advocate for greater student control of the USU as an organisation.
Right, so if the committee then is to represent the interests of students sort of against the Senate for all intents and purposes, why do you see the USU board as incapable of representing the students against the Senate?
I would like to see, for example, board members sit on this committee, but I would also like to see students within the student populace that are passionate about seeing student control of student affairs be able to have a say and be able to represent those views to board members. For example, board members would definitely sit on this committee as a secretary does on the Clubs and Societies Committee, but in terms of lessening Senate control, we need as many voices as possible innovating on how to do that, and that's why I would like to hand that process to as many students as possible.
Okay. So then do you see them as another group of voices that sort of would exist in tandem with the board?
Yes, so just additional voices in trying to fix this problem.
Do you feel that they would have any sort of extra credibility or sort of claim that might mean that, any competing interest might listen to them, whether that be the CEO of the union or the Senate or...
I think it definitely flags that this is an issue students are passionate about, the creation of this committee, and that should give it weight. and the fact that students have organised around this issue is another reason it should be given weight. So I would hope that the CEO and the Senate would listen to those concerns.
Cool.
Moving on to your CNS training
Yes.
policy, what do you feel is inadequate about the current training system that requires an overhaul?
Well, I went to every training for the CNS program within the last year, and at the moment they basically are lectures to students. Like, they just sit you down and show you the intricacies of the role of a treasurer and not much more. For example, we have so many different positions within our CNS program. We have sponsorship officers, design officers. Let's have CNS actually attempt to teach those skills directly to those sort of students, like design skills, what's the best way to seek sponsorships. Let's see leadership programs be implemented to teach presidents how to best manage the roles of that portfolio. And that's sort of I would like to see it be more than just like a lecture on how the CNS program is run, and more practical skills that would suit those particular roles.
Do you see current staff that teach these skills in the lecture format that you say is currently taught? Do you think that they would be capable of teaching in this new way, or do you think the new staff need to be brought in to teach people how to take on these roles?
I think it would be great to have experts from other fields come in, and, for example, experts from fields in design come in and teach our design officers how to best use Photoshop, for example. I think, yeah, getting experts in would be a really positive step forward, but of course there'd be a financial burden there that we'd have to consider. So whether or not we consult with the CNS program of how to best run training next year, that's a question I'll have to answer if I'm elected.
Okay. Cool. Okay. Just moving on to your policy of the Daily Bull USU app.
Yeah.
I love apps.
Yes. I'm sure you
given,
Please
given
talk
that
about apps.
given that the Bull editorial team consists of only 6 people, who would be in charge of writing and editing the daily content?
No, like that was a reference to how the Bull used to be a daily bulletin. Like, right. It was just a reference to my knowledge of the union. I mean, like, this would be an app completely about, like, the union in all its entirety, like an official union app that could use that title, and it would have issues with the Bull on it, I suppose. I suppose I should have been clearer about that. But the people that would be responsible for running that app would be, hopefully, student interns, for example, within our tech department.
So apps are sort of a staple of election promises.
Yes, and they don't get delivered.
SRC,
yeah.
USU,
yeah.
Souls even. They promise apps
exactly, yeah.
for every single type of scenario. Why is your one different, and why is it more likely to happen?
I wanted to run on policy I see as achievable, so I discussed things like a USU app with past board directors, and they said that in the past they'd outsourced the creation of the app, it was ready to go, and then the union decided not to proceed with it and went with another company that went bankrupt. So the union did come close to delivering an app, but didn't see it shown through. So we have been working towards that for a while, and I would like, as a board director, to see that implemented properly by working with other board directors. So we've got, but there's been attempts towards this in the past, but as usual, it got waylaid by the day-to-day reality of running the union.
So you've promised free access, which
has been promised a lot before.
Oh, yeah, every single.
Yeah, every single. Yeah.
Obviously, I've got to ask you, why is it different this time?
Free access is something I'm so passionate about. I mean, the amount of students you talk to, the constant complaint is it's too expensive. And now that we have a union that's in a better financial position than it's ever been before, I would like to see access prices dramatically dropped by cutting from the sort of programs we've been talking about that receive a lot of funding. So, we've seen prices drop by $25. I'd like to see that process repeated year on year until we can say we're at a point where access is very, very affordable, even if it's only $10. And
so,
I'm running because I want to engage as many students in this union as possible, and I want to set ambitious promises for myself.
So it's not that you're after free access,
I'm after access that's as cheap as possible, and in the interim adopting policies like scholarships for people like international students, low SES students. We've already got, for example, the E12 scheme. We already have Indigenous scholarships. But I would like to see the union make access as cheap as possible, as quickly as possible, because that is the best way to engage students in the union initially, not have that $75 barrier. And it is a gradual process. You can't just get elected and deliver it. It's something you've got to fight throughout your term on board.
Right, so our final question is going to be, what's your overall policy priority? In the sense of, like, you know, do you have a priority list of what you would implement first? Is there anything on your policy? You just said that, like, the price of access is very important to you.
Yeah.
Is that your number one priority, or would you fight for other things on that list first?
The things I'm most interested in, creating a culture of respect in our union, and a union that is student controlled, and a union that is equitable. So things that fall under welfare, like a free breakfast bar and cheaper access, is something I'm going to prioritise as union board director, and working positively with all board directors I'm elected with to make our union truly student controlled is the other aspect of my policy I'm most engaged with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. I think we'll wrap it up there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you so much for...
Thanks.